Well, hello, students. This is your professor, Shalomo Levy. It seems like just a few weeks ago, I was recording a video to welcome all of you to this course on American history. And now, after just a few short weeks, it seems, I'm recording a video to explain how our course is going to come to a conclusion. Of course, we have the debate on the American Civil War this week, and I'll talk about what to expect with that. Then you have your final exam next week, and I wanted to let you know what to expect, the structure and format, and even some of the content of what's going to be asked on that final exam. And then finally, I want to explain how I calculate your grade for this course. And so these are questions that students are often very curious about, interested in at the end of the semester, and I want to explain all that to you now. But before I do that, allow me to take a moment to thank you for being such a wonderful class. You know, I've been teaching at Northampton Community College for over 15 years, and it still amazes me at the conclusion of a successful semester of the things that made it so good. It is the course itself, of course, American history, which is very interesting. It's the books that we read. It is the professor and what he or she brings to the course. But I think the most important element are the students themselves. And you've been a great class, and I want to thank you and let you know that I noticed and appreciate your hard work, the spirit that you brought to the course, a spirit of a love of learning, the respect that you had for each other, and the quality of the engagement, both in our online discussions and our personal interactions when we've had them. I thank you for being a good class for me and for your classmates. Now, as to your last assignment, this final assignment is a 20-point exercise, and it is another debate, much like the debate you had earlier in the semester on the American Revolution. Except this time, the teams are going to be the Confederate South and the Union North. And I've divided you into teams based on your last name. So, all the students whose last names begin with A through L, you are going to be on the Confederate team. You're going to be on the South. And those students whose last names begin with M to Z, you are going to be on the North, the Union team. The debate takes place in 3 rounds, and the resolution is, was the American Civil War necessary and justified? If you are on the South, you're going to argue that this was absolutely necessary and totally justified. And you'll give all the reasons and explanations that they gave in the 19th century. And I want you to do it with as much passion and conviction as they did as well. Of course, you can use quotations. You can refer to anything in the book, anything in my presentations, or any outside research that you might have done. And you could bring all that to the debate. If you're the North, you're going to be arguing the opposite. You're going to be arguing that the Civil War was not necessary, it was not justified, it was an unfortunate event that should not have taken place. And so you're going to be arguing the other side just as vigorously and with as much passion as people did in the 19th century. Again, stay in character regardless of what you think personally. This is an exercise in which you put yourself in the shoes, in the place of the historical figures that we're studying as an intellectual exercise, so that you can see every issue from both sides and think about it fairly and objectively, looking at the facts and evidence and really understanding and appreciating the intensity of the moment. And I also think you're going to have a lot of fun with it, as you did with the American Revolution. In the first round, you make your arguments in support of your team, for or against the resolution. In the second round, which begins on Thursday, then you go into the rebuttal phase. So first round, opening arguments. Second round is rebuttal. That's where you attack the positions and arguments made by your opponents. So you read some of their arguments, and then you come up with your own rebuttal, pointing out weaknesses, contradictions, flaws in logic, omission of evidence and facts. And so you really engage them critically in pointing out why their position is incorrect, why it's wrong, or why it's weak. And then the third round, which should conclude on Friday, but I will keep the debate open throughout the weekend for students who work and have other responsibilities. But the final round of the debate is the closing arguments. And that's when you get to respond to the criticisms made against you or your team during the rebuttal round, and to explain why you think your team should win this debate. So that is the kind of culmination. It is a summary of everything, but it should be generally shorter than the first two rounds. Although this is a team exercise, students are graded individually based on what you write and what you say. But try to help out your classmates. Try not to be repetitive. So if someone has already made a point, try to introduce a new fact. Keep the debate and conversation moving and going and exciting and enjoyable. And that is the final exercise that you have for this class. Now, next week you'll have your final exam. And typically the final exam will begin the Thursday after the last day of classes. So whenever classes end, then that next Thursday, the final exam will begin. And it will stay up or be available until midnight on Sunday of that week. The final exam is going to be different from your previous exams in the following respects. First of all, there are no multiple choice on the final exam. It will consist of 3 essays. And the reason I've gone with this format is when this course is over and when you're out of college, you'll probably never have to take another multiple choice exam again. But the final exam is a good indication of how students will actually use information in the real world, right? In conversations, in discussions, how you draw on your knowledge of history to understand events, how you express yourself in written form or verbally. And so I asked basically 3 questions, and you'll answer each of those in essay form. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you a little bit about what the questions are going to be, so that you can prepare yourself on how you might answer them. The first question I'll tell you is going to be on the Civil War. This was the last topic of the course. It was a big topic. We spent a lot of time on it. We had a debate on it, which is why all of your preparation for the debate will actually help you on the final exam itself. And in that, I'm going to ask you to trace the path of self-destruction by identifying the key issues and political events that led to this conflict. So here you're not a part of a team. You could draw on both sides, but really objectively, what factors led to this bloody civil war in the United States? And you'll draw on those different things. The second part of that question is going to ask you to look very closely at the life of Abraham Lincoln and the war that took place within him in terms of his own evolution, some of his contradictions. You read a lot of his personal letters, some of his public speeches, and you looked at his role as president during the Civil War. And so the role that Abraham Lincoln played in particular in the Civil War is the second part of that question. And then finally, with this question, to assess the lasting impact of the Civil War on America's history since then, how it changed the country, its significance, its importance, the constitutional amendments that resulted in 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, and how they changed the country. So that's what you'll do in essay number 1. I should point out at this point that this essay is not timed. So unlike your previous exams, we had 2 hours to take the exam. I think this exam could be completed in about the same time. But because it's an essay format, I don't necessarily expect you to write all 3 essays in one sitting. So for that reason, on this exam, and this exam only, you'll be permitted to close the exam, maybe take a break between essays, stretch your feet, get some fresh air, have some milk and cookies, then come back and write your next essay. So this exam will allow you to do that over the course of the exam. The second essay gives you a choice between 2 topics. So the topics I'm going to allow you to choose from with that is the role of economics or the role of religion. So it's not about any particular period. These are concepts and issues that have flowed through all periods in American history, right? As opposed to one thing, these are forces. What kind of forces shaped the growth and development of this country. Economics is a big one, from the reasons why Christopher Columbus and the Spanish were exploring, to the motive of the early colonial settlers, to motives even through the Civil War. How has economics shaped the growth and development of the United States? And you can pick any period, any people you want in developing your answer. Similarly, the role of religion. And so religion has been very important to American history, from the Puritans, the Quakers, the Shakers, the Mormons. And so how has religion shaped America? And you can pick any period, any event, the Great Awakening, the role of religion in the First Amendment, any event, person, or people that you want to discuss in the scope of this course to show how important religion has been to American history. And those are your two choices for essay number 2. The third essay is also a choice. So the choices there are to look at the role of education or the role of identity. By education, I mean, we've read in this course the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. You read the autobiography of Frederick Douglass. We looked at the life of Abraham Lincoln. And so how important has education been in the growth and development of the United States? And what role do you think it will play in the present and the future? And this is an essay that you could address on the final exam. The last option is the role of identity. And America is one of the most diverse countries in the history of the world. It has a very diverse history, as you've learned. And you could explore the role of race, gender, ethnicity, evolving nationality, using people and events that we've studied this semester in the course. And so you can do either of those, but not both. So again, there are a lot of choices for you to choose from as you write those 3 essays. These are not papers, they're not research papers. I think most students could answer each of these questions well in 3 to 4 paragraphs. They should be fairly literate, but I'm not grading it on necessarily grammar and spelling, but it should be intelligent, it should be thoughtful. You're free to reach your own conclusion as long as you support that with evidence and facts to support what it is you'll be saying in your essay. So I want them to be of good quality, and for that reason, as I said, it's not time, but it's not a research paper either. Once you've looked at the questions and once you've began writing it, you cannot refer to outside sources. So you can't use books, you can't use the internet, you can't talk to people. You're still under the honor code, just as we would be doing it if we were doing it in class. You're under the honor code, not to cheat in any way, and under your personal integrity. There are also a lot of features now on Blackboard that can identify if students have gotten things off the internet and things like that. So just be careful with that and do your best. Finally, let me tell you a little bit about how I calculate your final grade for this course. Because students are often interested in this, and although I explain some of it on the syllabus, and it's there for you to read on the first page of the syllabus, let me show you a peek of how I actually do this. Okay, students, let me give you a quick peek at how I manage and calculate your grades in Blackboard. The first thing you should look at when you're interested in knowing, your grades and assignment is if you go to Blackboard and look on the first page of the course syllabus, which I provided here in Blackboard as a digital copy. It gives you the course description, and right at the bottom of the page it breaks down the course requirements for this course in American History 1 during this semester. Students have 4 exams. All of those exams combined for a total of 65% of their grade, and then their weekly class discussions accounted for another 25% of the grade, and then the final exam would count for 10%. So this is provided there in the course syllabus on the first day of the course, showing you the breakdown. And you can always go back and look at it, but particularly at the end of the semester, if you want to know how much everything is worth and how I do the calculation, this is the formula that we use. And then of course it goes through other things, my class policies on attendance, on late assignments. All of that was listed here in the syllabus, as well as the printed version of each course assignment, when the exams are due, the week that they're going to be given. All of that is in the Blackboard shell, and it's also usually in the weekly shell of Blackboard, and I make these announcements often in class. But you can find all of that information there. The next step, now this screen is something that you can't see. And what I want you to know is that Blackboard is more than a website. That's the way it may look to students, it's just like any other website. But behind that is a whole database, and it is connected to a computer, and it also records all of your grades. And I use that particularly at the end of the course to help me do all the mathematical calculations and report my grades to the college. So I have a screen for the instructor, which allows me to see all the students. I have that blocked out right now. But I want you to notice several things. One, it tracks everything you do in Blackboard. I know how often you go. I know when you look at a folder, if you look at a review sheet, if you look at my PowerPoint presentations, my notes, if you do the practice test, when you take a test, it records what day you took it, how long you took to answer the questions. If you're reading the book, I can even see what page you're on, how much time you spend every week doing that. So Blackboard records everything you do from the moment you log in until the moment you log out. And so that's why here, off the screen, it has the names of all the students in my class, and it even shows me the last time they logged in, right? So if you just look here, you know, there's you know, most students have been in this week, but I got one student down here, who the last time they logged in was like 2 weeks ago. You know, the student hasn't logged in the last 3 weeks. And so I could see that. This is not what I use to calculate the grade, but it gives me a picture of who the student is and what they're doing. The next column is the most important one. It's called average, right? And this is what I use to calculate your average. Now, right now, we're at the end of the semester. You notice it has a red line through it. If I do the drop-down menu, it gives us an option, hide from student. So I could block this out so students can't see it. And that's the way it is now, is hidden from students. But at the end of the course, I'll turn it on so that you can see it. The reason I have it hidden now, I'll just open it up. I'm giving you a peek as to how it's actually done. When I go into this, it allows me to set the criteria for grade calculation. And let's move this over a little bit here. So I want this column to display, as it says here, the weighted sum of all grades, including discussions, assignments, and exams. I wanted to display it in that column first as a letter grade, which is how it's entered on your transcript, but then also as a percentage, that is, as a number. And I want to be able to see both, and the students would both be able to see the letter grade and the actual percentage. This is where I then tell it how to do the math. So this corresponds essentially to what I have on the syllabus, that all of the exams together, and it's going to go to look at every exam, and it's going to use the average of those exams to be 70% of the grade in this case. And then it's going to take the discussion grades, and it's going to average those, and all of your weekly discussion assignments are going to count for 30% of your grade. So in this case, in this class, this would be 100% of the grade will be based on a combination of their test scores on all the exams and the results of the discussions they've been getting every week. Now, as you know, the discussions aren't always the same value. Most discussions are 12 points, but then we'll have like debates on the American Revolution and the Civil War. Those are worth 20 points. Your first assignment, the autobiography, was also worth 20 points. So here I have it checked to weight the assignments proportionally, not equally. If I did it equally, it would treat every assignment the same. Proportionally, it will give more value to a 20-point assignment than it would to a 12-point assignment. Right? I'm showing you this so that if you want to do your average manually, make sure you're taking all of these things into account. And if you follow the same procedure and do it manually, you should get the same results. If you don't calculate for all of the discussions, of which we have, normal semester 14 assignments or 4 exams, then you do that. Now the same thing for the exams, to weight it proportionally, because the final exam may count more than a regular unit exam. And in this case, Blackboard will give the exam the proper weight that it deserves, whether it's a regular exam or the final exam. And then it will calculate this, and this would be 10%. Now I have the option over here to select other things. So I could choose other assignments, and I just tell Blackboard what I wanted to do and how I wanted to calculate the grade. If I want to skip an exam, maybe it's a particular semester we didn't use that exam, or I created something else. And so I can tailor it for the specific course and the specific semester that I'm teaching. This calculate a running total is an option that I don't use, and that's why I have it turned off for the rest of the semester. Okay, as you can see, this option for calculate a running total, sometimes students would ask me during the semester, how am I doing in the course at this point? That would be a running total, right? And just to say, just calculate the averages and test scores up to this point. And that would mean it will ignore any blank exams or discussions that we haven't taken yet, and just do the average of how many things we've done up to this point. So I don't use that. I wanted to calculate the final grade for the course. So then I wanted to look at everything over the entire course and then give me the average. If you want to know how you're doing midway through the course, then you could look at the My Grades, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then if we've only taken 2 tests or 3 tests, then you would take the average of those 2 or 3, right? And you could do your regular average yourself, and that will give you the kind of running total. But I don't use it to do a running total for 2 reasons. One, when it is a running total, it ignores all blank grades. So normally the default is if they don't see a grade there, it counts it as a 0, meaning the student didn't take the exam or didn't do that assignment. So it will count it as a 0. When you're doing a running total, you want it to ignore all zeros because we haven't gotten to those exams yet. So only count the ones that they've taken. Sometimes this gives students the wrong impression. If they look at a running total and it only counts the result of the assignments that they've done, that might be a good average, assuming they haven't missed any assignments. So it doesn't count. It doesn't take into account when an assignment is missed. The way I have it set it here, it will count any missed assignment as a 0. So if you've skipped a discussion or you've missed an exam, it will count that as a 0. And then finally, right now I have showed this column to students, I have it as no. After the final exam, I'm going to change this to yes, so that you can see how I calculated your grade. And you'll see that in Blackboard, what the grade was. Okay? Okay, so here we are back in my grade book, and this is the average column that we were just talking about. So right now it's calculating students' averages. It's always doing that. When all of the grades are in, then the number should be accurate. So after all the test scores are in, including the final exam, all the discussions have been graded, and I will check to make sure I've graded everything. And then I'll look at this, and this is what I'll use to enter my grades to the college. That uses a different program, but I could either print this or just look at this at the screen, and as I go down the roster, I could see this student has a 95.1787 average, and that is equivalent to an A, and I would enter an A. This student has a 90.623, which is an A minus, and I would enter that, and so on and so forth, as is indicated here. I will be able to see this, and the student will be able to see it as well. If you look across, then you have the actual exams and test scores. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 exams, which all students would have taken by then. You can see some students missed exams, and you'll see that it doesn't show it as a 0, but it just shows no number there. No number would count as having missed it. I don't use these columns total and weight, and they should be blocked out. And then here you could see the results of all of your weekly discussions, right? And so, you know, well, the students got 12, so sometimes they got extra credit, which is 15. So if the assignment was worth 12, but they did a really good job, then they might have got extra credit, and I would have given them 15 points on the assignment. And Blackboard grades this proportionally, and so it will add that extra credit to their average. And you could see all of this for the whole semester, all the discussions for the week, including the debate. Here, I hope you can see this. I'll make sure you can see it. Yeah, at the end, at the time I'm recording this, students taking the debate on the Civil War. And so this yellow marker is what I see, meaning there's something here I have to grade. Right? Here, there's nothing, student didn't take it. Here, student submitted assignment. They submitted assignment. I will check to make sure that everything the students have submitted, I have graded. Now the debates, I have to grade manually. I have to actually read them and enter a number. So, but I'll make sure that there are no flags. So students worry, well, did you get this? This is also, I would say, and this is very important, that you submit everything in Blackboard, because it records your grades. And this is what I use to calculate your grade. So this is why you really shouldn't send me anything, an assignment by email, because if it's in my email inbox and it's not in here, then it's not going to be calculated. Right? So if there's a problem with Blackboard, you need to work that problem out with me until it could accept it and until it's recorded. If it's not in here, then it's not going to be calculated. So be aware of that in this class and your other classes that use Blackboard. This records all of your grades and assignments, and then we use this calculator to generate your final grade. So I can see your students have submitted things, and these things have to be graded before I run the average in order for it to be accurate. And I'll make sure that all that is done. Right now they haven't taken the final exam, so there's going to be a blank column there. But after the exam period is over, all the students who have taken the final exam, there'll be numbers here. And now when it calculates it, it should be accurate, right? And then so that you know, I use this as a guide because it's very helpful. Before Blackboard was created, I have to do this with a calculator for each student, and that just took a lot of time. This is very quick and very accurate because it's a computer, and then it gives me the grade recommendation. I count it as a grade recommendation because I do have some latitude to take into account class participation for students who really contributed a lot to the course and their comments. Sometimes students who have done extra credit assignments, and I do have a category for that as well. Okay, and the last thing I want to show you is how it looks to you when you go to My Grades. I do have a category here for papers and extra credit. So in courses where a research paper is required, my writing intensive courses, my honors classes, the students would submit that there. And students who have done extra credit projects that have been pre-approved with me, that they were going to do it in advance, they would submit their extra credit projects there. I'll see that. I'll take the extra credit assignment and add that to their grade. So usually if I say I'll give you 10 points for going to this lecture or doing something, then I'll take those 10 points and add that to your lowest test score. For the rest of you, if you just want it, when you go in, and this is how it looks to the student, and you look at My Grades, it looks like that, right? These are usually the assignments from the textbook. So I give you the chapter and practice questions. These do not count. So that's why when you saw in the grade book, I don't use the scores from these practice tests to calculate your average. So there's no risk in you taking those tests. They could only help you, make you familiar with the style of the question, to let you know which chapters you know well, which ones you need to work on more. But I don't, I could, but I don't use this in calculating your average. Those are just for you to practice. Now your weekly discussion assignments, you should see your own scores here, and this is how it looks to you. So discussion 1, it was worth 12 points, and if you took it, you would see how many points out of 12 you got. Whereas the great debate was worth 20 points, it shows it right there, and it would show how many points you got there. The constitutional worksheet, if you did that, your scores would be there. And so this is how you could look at this at any time in the course and see how you're doing. Okay, well, this was a brief summary of how I calculate grades. I hope it was helpful for you, and I hope it answers any questions that you may have. The most important thing aside the procedure is make sure you're doing the work, you're studying, you're preparing, and make sure the grades that I see in there are as high as they can possibly be. And if you do that, you will certainly be successful. Take care and be well. Okay, well, with that, let me leave you with a final word of advice, since this might be the last time that I get to see most of you in this course in particular. And this comes from my own life and my own experiences. I think back to my first year in college when I was 18. As you know, I'm from New York, and I went to Middlebury College in Vermont for my undergraduate degree. And I remember my parents purchased a big trunk, like a Foot Locker, for me to go away to college. I could have had suitcases, but they got a big trunk, and I put all of my clothes, a typewriter, a dictionary in that trunk, and I went off to college. I came home for Thanksgiving break, Christmas break, and spring break. But at the end of the year, at the end of the semester, I was coming home for the summer. And so I had to pack that trunk and move out of the dormitory and come back to New York. And I discovered, as I began packing that trunk, after I put all the books that I read in all of my courses in my first year in college, I discovered that I no longer had room for all of my clothing. And so I had to find garbage bags and my laundry bag and everything to get the rest of my clothes. And I'm telling you this story because this was my way of assessing the quality of my own education. In those days, you had to wait for your grades to arrive in the mail. And so when the mailman came and you saw us from the college, you open up and you could see what your grades were from that semester. But I didn't have to wait for the mailman to tell me what my professors thought about how much I learned. I knew I was able to assess by the weight of that trunk and by my knowledge of how hard I worked, that I gave my best, and an awareness of how my skills had improved. The way that I spoke, my ability to comprehend and read material had all increased greatly. And so I knew how much I was learning, and I knew that I was getting a good education. And I hope the same is going to be true for you at the end of the semester, not only for this course, but in all of your courses and in your life, that you could assess how much you're learning. If you're growing, you should feel that you're getting smarter, you're getting better, your skills are improving. And if that's happening, then you're getting a good education. If it's not happening and you feel like you're the same person that you were, when you got out of high school or a year ago or 2 years ago, then you could assess where you need to make adjustments so that you can really see the improvement in your life that college is supposed to help bring about. And if you do those things, I'm sure you'll be successful. And I wish you the best in your future education. And if any of you ever need a letter of recommendation, don't hesitate to come back to me, and I'll be happy to tell any university or any four-year college what you would like in this class. Take care and be well.